Welcome, weary travelers. Come, find sanctuary here. This is the Train Hands channel. Today's subject has been quite the hot topic in recent years, and reasonably so. Having the tools and the capabilities to face and overcome an event that puts you in a place away from home, having to navigate through varying degrees of threats and obstacles is more evident than ever. The context of this loadout and its setup we're going over today is one of a minimum general baseline. The context threat considerations is that in the next level above our current everyday civil society within rule of law. Specifically, civil unrest or upheaval within rule of law, or temporary without rule of law. For example, within the states, the all too infamous, mostly peaceful protests, along with years past various degrees of such during Hurricane Katrina, and so on. The context here is foremost prioritizing concealment and low visibility. This is to avoid skylining equipment or personal capabilities to a likely hostile populace or even governmental authorities who are focusing on a larger picture and lack immediate distinguishability of threats aside from overt weapons and assumed intent. Your primary goal in this context is to exfil from the immediate threat area and move to immediate security, then from the general threat area to ideal security, most likely your home, aka castle, or so on. The majority of prospective threats in this context are realistically most likely to lean more towards imminence first and immediate second. Meaning, even while in the immediate threat area, those threats aren't necessarily immediately pursuing you specifically, but by your being in the immediate vicinity of those threats, the imminence of them becoming immediate to you increases in likelihood. This kit primary consideration is urban-oriented survival with the ability to address higher-level threats, multiple adversaries with rifle-like platforms, and so on, for foot-based travel. If you have a vehicle that you're able to navigate with, especially a car, your capabilities are increased significantly. Even a bike offers additional or possibly even more ideal capabilities in that regard, but this is geared towards that premise of foot-based travel and response to threats. This kit shown is not intended to be the example. Matter of fact, it does not even highlight the entirety of the kit I personally take into consideration, especially with vehicles in mind, as needs fluctuate constantly. For example, my considerations for driving 30 minutes downtown to the coffee shop alone is different than driving an hour plus away with my family to an extremely dense metropolitan area. Myself in a local context, this baseline suffices. My entire family not within relatively reasonable walking distance of home, there are much greater detail of considerations to be accounted for. Additional note, always ensure you have a bare minimum essentials in your vehicle to complement this baseline. This is another video of its own, but if you don't have a single day's worth of drinking water or even a solid pair of shoes/boots and socks you could go distance in, dedicated to your vehicle, then you're behind the curve. This is simply the absolute baseline of kit I believe makes up the general foundation of needs, considering immediate survivability in the face of a situation in the specific context of threats and immediate needs with such. Load-bearing equipment. Your choice of LBE in conjunction with your attire is arguably the most critical component of your covert kit considerations. Not only does it allow you to physically carry said equipment, it is also a huge part of your outward appearance affecting how you are perceived. Personally, my primary goal with my choice of LBE and attire is prioritizing perceived normalcy, or if we want to say it in a cool guy way, being the gray man. With such, for my general baseline, I've opted for a smaller sling bag and a medium-sized fanny pack. Bag. My choice of the sling bag as a minimum baseline is in prioritization of its extremely streamlined profile, generally speaking, and even having the ability to relatively be covered under a jacket in appropriate contexts. Which, side note, if you're basing the majority of your quote low vis capability on the necessity of a jacket or additional layers, you're missing the point. Such should be an additional bonus, not the baseline. There are times where I would opt for a medium-size traditional backpack, and such is definitely appropriate depending on the context. The main considerations here is balancing size and style. Generally speaking, around 30 liters or less and mountaineering styles is what I personally lean towards. Obviously, there's a balance and a place for variations, whether you're the Jan Sports guy or tactical Vertex dude. Essentially, find the middle ground for your environment/context, and just don't be that guy with a pack that requires a waist belt and uses every square inch of space to maximize the molly. Support kit. Support equipment can be defined as LBE that carries essential items prioritizing quick/immediate access. When considering support equipment in this context, while chic, the use of mini or supposedly concealable chest rigs almost never truly fulfill this role. If whatever you're wearing prints more than your handgun without a jacket, wearing in a plaid button-up, or something of that variation, it's just not realistic. Hence, an overt/non-concealed option that is environmentally appropriate, i.e. the fanny pack. Options like fanny packs are common commodities. The key considerations is the ability to quickly don with minimal steps under the time constraints of that situation, along with the same guidelines of style and size as the primary bag. With a fanny pack, either clip it around your waist or throw it over your front chest. Obviously, there are other options, and I will also admit that there are situations where even the carrying of a fanny pack in addition to a pack could stand out. This just serves as a relatively realistic baseline that could be scaled at a moment's notice. Attire. As mentioned before, your attire along with your LBE are arguably the most critical physical components of maintaining low visibility in an austere environment. Attire is one of those considerations that falls under so much nuance that it's not something that can be overarchingly proclaimed as the solution. A relatively general baseline for such that seems to fit most environments: a plaid button-up of some kind, jeans, and tennis shoes. Just be mindful that the aspects of these items, such as brands, colorways, and even fit or styling, can greatly affect the perceived appearance of them. This is where the stereotype of the gray man comes in, and why it is a stereotype in the first place. In short, take genuine consideration of what is popular styling in your personal environment and dress appropriately while prioritizing the ability of properly concealing weapons in our next consideration: armor. Armor is fairly straightforward. If you can wear it, do it. Hard rifle rated armor is ideal if can be appropriately concealed. But under the context of this baseline, soft armor, 3A generally speaking, arguably fits the overall priorities, especially concealment, most appropriately. Equally, under the context of this situation level, handgun calibers are realistically the most likely one would face, making soft armor appropriate, all priorities considered. Backpack armor is a highly advertised option and can have context to an extent as better than nothing, But in this context where there is a relative preparation time of threats being imminent but not immediate, on-body armor properly fulfills this concept, protecting your vitals much more consistently by being in a fixed position. Defensive tools. And now, what you all came here for, the sexy stuff. Lethal weapons. Enter Gibson and Glover. For obvious reasons, lethal tools are a must-have in this context. Your first line should be a given. Your everyday carry concealed handgun. Ideally, in this context, a duty-style concealed handgun would be considered the best option. Essentially prioritizing capability foremost, as realistically, if this is all you had, you should be at a level that you could face higher threat levels than just a stereotypical, within civil rule of law, 3 yards, 3 shots scenarios. Personally, I feel this role with my Glock Model 45 in a sidecar style holster, hosting a spare mag. Yes, all it has is a TLR7. Don't come and get me, guys. Next steps in the PDW. If you're not familiar with the context and concepts behind the PDW, I'd encourage you to go give my past video going over such in depth, along with checking out Brass Facts and his videos on such. Utilizing this context and concept behind the PDW, this is exactly where such a platform shines. A platform with full-size primary style capabilities that is practically concealable and almost immediately deployable. With such, it is notable to specify that the off-body PDW should not be relied upon as the sole lethal option, considering its inability to be deployed against immediate threat situations, whereas a on-body concealed handgun having such capability. As I note in my PDW video, its highlight is in those imminent but not immediate scenarios with its concealed off-bag deployment speed, even when that speed is under 5 seconds or so. Considering the current options on the market, I'm personally still of the opinion that the Raider X chassis for the SIG P320 by Flux Defense is the current overall best option for such, but obviously there are various options and you can select what is most relative and available to yourself. Prospectively, Flux's recent release 365 Raider plays the best of both worlds, having the capability of concealing a PDW inside the waistband, or as everybody in that realm is saying, the PDW in your pants. I have not yet had personal experience with such, but when I have the opportunity, I'll provide personal perspective. After our lethal options, we have our considerably less sexy non-lethals. Non-lethals as a whole is an entire conversation in and of itself, but in short, not all situations are morally or legally immediately lethal engagements. Having additional options to, at minimum, have the prospects of temporarily de-escalating a situation and provide a window of exfil, especially in civil unrest-like scenarios where mobs are a big consideration, is huge. The immediate standout option, good old OC spray. There are a considerable amount of options on the market, and this is not an area I will speak to in large, but I've personally utilized Palm's products to fill this role up to this point. The other option that the majority of those seriously prepared are typically carrying anyway is a high lumen / high candela handheld light. While not as long-lasting as OC spray, it is an arguable best first option even before spray is reasonably applicable. Immediately following lethal considerations is that equipment to plug any of those pesky unwanted holes of your own. Good old medical. Having a baseline of medical equipment for yourself and any of your immediate loved ones you're responsible for is the absolute minimum. Prioritize medical. Simple. Next, communications. The ability to communicate with or monitor communications of the outside world in the midst of a situation of this gravity is an absolute must. While depending on context, you may or may not have those primary individuals with you in that situation, the ability to communicate or monitor other communications provides intel. Intel for those outside in concern of you, and or intel on the situation you find yourself within. Both could prove critically valuable. Getting towards the back end of kit, the need for a minimum of sustainment gear rounds things out. The absolute minimum of such, water. Kit and tools for collection, carrying, possibly needed purification are a must. Personally, for size/packability, the Sawyer Peak filter along with additional purification options, electrolyte packs, and so on is the route I've personally taken. There's a ton more that could be said here, but for a great in-depth breakdown, check out Dirty Civilian's video, Emergency Water Supply Plan with Cana Provisions. Finally, for additional expanded considerations, we have maps and navigation tools, a reliable tool with the ability to track time that is not your cell phone. Grab a Casio F91 at minimum or class it up to your heart's content, my personal leaning. Documentation tools, blades and multi-tools, rural survival equipment, maximum capacity tools such as night vision, gas mask, additional ammunition, hard armor, and so on. Personal notes. As I noted in the beginning, even my personal setup does not yet fully encompass the degree of perspective considerations entirely, but a house is not built overnight. This loadout alone has been years in the making, both in trial and error along with progressive investment. In time, I will continually increase capabilities in the areas I find myself lacking, currently notable, gas mask and advanced communications, such as satellite comms and so on. Just take note, practical progression is key, and dead is dumb, guys. Overall, kit is nothing without the knowledge and skills to employ it. While we all love a good gear breakdown video, the goal of this video is to provoke thought in the concepts behind the gear and its usage through consideration. Some other solid videos on this topic in various degrees: Garantham's Urban Survival video, Zenith Firearms' recent low-vis loadout video, of which I personally found very refreshing and similar light that I've hit on here, Dirty Civilian's realistic kit video, and Brass Facts proportional response video. If you appreciated this video's information or thought provocation, please consider liking, subscribing, all the things. You can also find me over on Instagram at Trained Hands and at Hunter Wealot. Additionally, on Patreon at Trained Hands, and merch is currently available upon request. Site going live soon. Most importantly, turn to Christ. Embrace identity in Him, daily discipline, and the pain of physical and spiritual refinement. Brothers in Christ, pick up your cross and carry it daily. May the Lord bless you and keep you. See you guys.